Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. And in today's podcast, I'm going to be doing something different. For the upcoming series, I'm going to be rating books and how to write and reading and basically anything in that topic. For today's podcast, I've chosen the book Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This is the first book in a seven-book series, and honestly, it's a really good book for really any age group. I read this book when I was in third grade, and it was my favorite book when I was at that age. And it's really amazing how uh, J.K. Rowling captures every scene and moment in the book and gives it to the reader. It's an amazing book, and it also inspires you a lot in your writing journey. But today, I wanted to ask you, what if Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone isn't just about magic? It has wands, it has a three-headed dog, and it has Hogwarts. But the reason why it works so well is because it follows the hero's journey. The hero's journey is also called a monomyth, and it was made popular by Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces in 1949. And it's really an amazing way to write a fantasy story or any story that involves a hero. And today I'm going to be diving deep into that and how you can not only make your stories better with it, but also how J.K. Rowling and many authors just like that use this framework that Joseph made to write their books. So, of course, welcome back to my series, and I hope you enjoy and stay tuned. So, there are 12 stages in this uh, planner. So the first one is status quo, where the character is introduced and everything about them is also introduced. The second one is call to adventure, where they finally get inspired and slowly you can see what the upcoming story is gonna be about, and they slowly get pulled into the main events. Then the next one is refusal of call, where the character might refuse to go on the journey or might be scared, maybe shy. The fourth one is meeting the mentor, which is someone who helps them along the way, someone who guides them, maybe even helps them get over their enemy or whatever the outcome of the story is. The fifth one is crossing the threshold, where they leave their ordinary world, as so it's put as, and they go to the world where they'll be in. So in Harry Potter, that was Hogwarts. Uh, so Harry leaves his normal world and goes to the magical world or Hogwarts through the train that departs from platform 9 and 3/4. The sixth one is tests, allies, and enemies, where the main character is tested, trains, maybe even practices defeating their enemy. And as the name says, allies, they'll make friends along the way, people who'll assist them, maybe even sidekicks, and enemies. This could be someone who they're fighting in the long run, or their enemy. The eighth one is the ordeal, which is essentially the climax, or the biggest point of the story. The ninth part is the reward, where they get what they want to get after all of this, or something good happens to them because of whatever they solved. The 10th one is the road back, where they go back to their normal world. And the 11th one is that resurrection, where what the character learns or what happens. And the next one is return with the elixir, or they return with what they've learned over that course of the story. Now going back to the first one, Now, going back to the first one, I wanted to go into a little bit detail of what Harry Potter has. So, as I said, the first one was status quo, and this book, Harry starts in his status quo with the Dursleys in their house, where he's treated as almost like a house pet, or not even a house pet, and he lives under the stairs, and his aunt and uncle uh, care after him, and he has a cousin named Dudley, who is also pretty spoiled, and no one really treats him properly, and his life is tough. And this makes the audience root for him because they see he's an underdog, but he hasn't done anything that bad, or they haven't seen any background on him, and he has no idea that he's famous yet, or that he's the son of two very famous magicians. And the next one is the call to adventure. This is when the letters from Hogwarts start arriving, and the owl drops all the letters, and their house gets flooded with letters, and then his aunt and uncle try to block it from him. And this is when the reader sees that he's not an ordinary person, and he could be the hero. And the third one is the refusal of the call, where when he initially gets it, he doesn't reply, and his uncle blocks all the letters and forces him not to read them. But then eventually he of course reads them in the end, and the Dursleys are a big refusal, and they don't want him to go into the magical world. The fourth one is meeting the mentor, when his aunt and uncle decide to take them to a random island in the ocean and stay there because the house has become flooded with letters. And there, Harry meets Hagrid on his birthday, where he becomes his first mentor. And through Hagrid, he basically unlocked the magical world, and this is his first step to a way bigger life. And he takes Harry to Diagon Alley. He gets his supplies, and he gets a first real welcome into the wizarding world. Then the fifth one is crossing the threshold, where when it's time for him to go to Hogwarts, his aunt and uncle hesitantly allow him to go, and he goes to platform 9 3/4, which took a while to find, and he finally crosses the border. Now, the sixth one is tests, allies, and enemies. On the train, Harry makes a friend named Ron Weasley, and when they get to Hogwarts, he makes a friend named Hermione, and he also finds that everything is a little bit dangerous. It's a little bit mysterious, and he makes an enemy called Malfoy. And this is where he learns that it's not just about magic, but it's about teamwork, and it's a really big test to what's coming up ahead. The seventh one is approach to the inmost cave, which I missed before, but it's the approach to the biggest climax. And this is when they decide that they want to go over the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And they're not just being curious anymore, but they want to find an outcome. And they're training, and they go through all the stages, and they start researching, discovering. Then the eighth one is the ordeal or the climax, where it all comes together and the reader finally knows what's going on. This is where the ordeal is getting into is the danger zone, and it could be dangerous coming forward. And they go through the trap door, and the challenges get harder. They meet the three-headed dog. They go through all the challenges, and Hermione uses her intelligence, Ron uses his strategy, and Harry keeps going on alone, and he defeats Professor Quirrell by himself and finds the major plot twist, because Quirrell was originally a professor at Hogwarts, but then it turns out he was actually a part of Voldemort. And sorry if you didn't read the book, but this was a big spoiler. The ninth one is the reward, when Harry receives the stone, and because he wanted to find it, not to use it, but it was his reward. And this shows that he isn't greedy or power hungry, but he has the qualities of a true hero, and he wants to protect others, and this is what separates him from Voldemort, and this is what makes him the hero. The 10th one is the road back, where after the fight, Harry wakes up in the hospital wing, and Dumbledore explains to him what happened, and he gets to know everything. And then it's time for the holiday break, or for him to go back home. Then the 11th one is resurrection, where it means the hero is changed after the battle, and Harry understands what it's like to be a hero. And suddenly, everybody at Hogwarts knows who he is and the hero he is. But although back at home, nobody knows what happened to him. The 12th one is Return with the Elixir, where he returns to the Dursleys for the summer, and he's not the same kid anymore, but of course they don't know. And in this case, the Elixir is not a potion, but it's knowing that his life is the biggest gift, and it's not something he received in a bottle or something like that. So, as you can see, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is a very cool book with cool magic, and it's also really good for understanding hero's journey. Now, there are many other books like the series Percy Jackson or Narnia, or those fantasy books like that, or even any fictional book that involves a hero or characters. And if you are a writer, or if you're in school and you have an assignment, this is a really great way to plan your story, and it helps you cover everything, and it's really useful. And I found this book really interesting, and it was one of my favorite books. So that's all, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and please come back for the next episode. Bye.